As participants at the COP26 climate talks discuss how science and innovation can help fight the climate crisis, some scientists are pushing for mass adoption of technology that sucks harmful emissions out of the atmosphere. The world's largest direct air capture facility began operating in Iceland this year. Its developers say the same technology could be used across the globe. But rolling out these and other initiatives would require large amounts of funding. And negotiators in Glasgow have so far failed to come to any agreement on who will foot this bill. Mobin Nasir reports.
Power plants are notorious for emitting carbon dioxide and other pollutants into the atmosphere, but Iceland's electricity provider is cleaning up its act. It built the world's first direct air capture facility next to its power plant to suck harmful emissions out of the air.
So there is a very selective filter material inside our collector containers, which catches the CO2 molecules. And as soon as the filter is basically full, we close it off. Then we draw it out of the collector containers into basically in here, what we call the process hall.
Once captured, the gases are pumped 2 kilometers underground and injected into highly absorbent basalt rock. The plant costs $15 million to build, and it requires large amounts of energy to filter millions of cubic meters of air. It's capable of removing around 4,000 tons of carbon dioxide from the environment every year. Environmentalists say the world needs to eliminate several billion tons of the pollutant per year by 2050. That would require the construction of hundreds of similar plants around the world. Some advanced economies are pledging to raise money for such initiatives.
Innovation is the key to unlocking our future. That's why the United States is working to quadruple funding for clean energy research and development over the next 4 years.
But many developing countries simply don't have the resources. Richer economies have committed $100 billion to climate finance, but only a quarter of this money will be spent on adaptation technologies like carbon capture and storage. And climate activists say this is not nearly enough.
Climate change, unfortunately, has progressed so much that the impacts are being felt today, every day, everywhere, basically. But the developing countries in particular, the poorest and most vulnerable people there, face these impacts very immediately and are already suffering from that. Adaptation actions are required to try to prevent those impacts. I think we really need a breakthrough here at COP26, and we can't go on with this ongoing resistance, not even having a serious debate about it.
So far, world leaders have not reached any agreement on who will pay and how much. And many countries won't benefit from technological advancements to halt the climate crisis if the funding vacuum persists. Mobin Nasir, TRT World.
Well, for more on this, Jamie Beck Alexander joins us now from Duluth, Minnesota. She's the director of Drawdown Labs, which is a private sector testing ground for accelerating the scaling of climate solutions. Welcome to the program, Jamie. Thanks so much for joining us. So, tech solutions to reduce global heating have been talked about a lot at this year's COP26. Tell us more about the role that technology has to play in tackling the climate crisis.
Technology plays a huge role in tackling the climate crisis, but primarily to boost the solutions that we already have in hand today. So, according to our analysis at Project Drawdown, we don't necessarily need a lot of new technology, but we need technologies that will make our existing climate solutions more efficient, more scalable, and more accessible to more people around the world, as we just heard in your last segment. And so far, we haven't seen a lot of return on the very significant efforts that have been invested in new technologies like direct air capture. So we will need those down the line, but as your last segment showed, we're feeling climate impacts today, right now. And so we need to focus on absolute reductions. And according to our analysis, we already have these solutions. We have the practices and technologies to reduce emissions that will help the world limit warming to where the science says we need to. So now it's a matter of investing in those solutions, having technology in place that can help those solutions scale, getting more people trained to deploy those technologies to bring them into the world, and create millions of good-paying jobs to do that. So we like to say, when it comes to technology, what we have now is better than new. Focusing on scaling the solutions that we have to provide absolute reductions in emissions is where we need to focus.
Tell us more about those existing technologies. So through your research at Drawdown Labs, what have you found to show the most potential in terms of reducing global heating and therefore tackling the climate crisis?
Right. So the good news is that we know where these global greenhouse gas emissions are coming from that are warming the planet, and we know many of the practices and technologies to address it. So these climate solutions are things like shifting our electricity production to renewable energy, of course, to how we construct our buildings and how we power our buildings, shifting our modes of transport to public transit, electric vehicles, bikes. Agricultural practices that are regenerative for the soil, shifting our dietary practices to those that are more plant-based and eating less meat, reducing our food waste. We also need to look at how we're going to feed and keep 7 billion people around the world cool in an ever-warming world in ways that don't add to the climate, that don't add to global greenhouse gas emissions. And then we need to look at technologies that can protect and restore ecosystems that actually help absorb some of these greenhouse gases. So reforestation and protecting, oceans and peat bogs and mangroves that provide both important sequestration of carbon, and they also help protect local livelihoods that rely on those ecosystems.
Okay, Jamie Beck Alexander from Drawdown Labs. We'll have to leave it there, but thank you again for joining us on Money Talks.